Welcome to Talking About Watches with MrWatchMaster. I'm Andrew Cantor, co-founder and editor-in-chief of MrWatchMaster.com. In these podcasts, we're going to talk to amazing people in the watch world and discover some fascinating facts about them, their collections, and what they love about watches. In this episode, I speak with Zach Kazan, managing editor at Worn & Wound, a place to discover watches and experience enthusiasm. We hear his fascinating views on the industry, watches he loves, and future plans for the business. Just tell us a bit about yourself and tell us where your love of watches comes from.
So my name's Zach Kazan. Of course, I'm the managing editor of Worn & Wound, a watch media website based in New York City in the United States. And I've been interested in watches for a very long time, even before I started to actually like collect and accumulate watches. I sort of had a fascination with them. I can remember as a child, I played a lot of golf. And I can remember like going through like Golf Digest magazines like as a kid and seeing like ads for Rolex and Patek Philippe and these other luxury brands and just kind of being like a little bit fascinated by those. And it was like very early days of the internet, and I can remember like searching for those terms and just kind of like learning what I could about those brands. And it was just sort of like a point of fascination and not a hobby. And then as I got a bit older, I started to wear a watch more frequently. And when the watch internet thing started to happen with like the forums and later Instagram, that's when I started to really fall down the rabbit hole and began to like really pursue it as a hobby and later as a career.
Excellent. Are you still golfing?
Not as much as I'd like to. This is like an annually I kind of say to myself, this is the year I'm going to get back into it. And inevitably I'll go to the driving range and I'll be terrible. And I put the clubs away because I used to be good. I used to play a lot, and
Really?
I'm not
Yeah.
good anymore. So
Oh,
it's
well.
it's
Well, it is that thing,
frustrating.
isn't it? I mean, I'm sort of the same. I think you tend to overthink it. It's
Yes.
kind of, when you go up and kick a ball, or, you don't think, well, am I hitting it right? Or, well, when you're standing in front of a golf ball, you're thinking, well, are my feet in the right place? Have I got my body in shape? And,
Yeah.
it's just one of the things. It's got to be a natural thing, isn't it? So,
Yeah, it's one of those sports that everyone says you can enjoy it even if you're not like good at it. It's nice to
yeah,
be outside and nice to be with your friends, but like I used to play competitively like through high
right.
school, and
Wow.
so like for me it feels different. Like I remember like being
Yes.
actually like kind of good, like sort of good at golf, and
Uh,
now I'm not. But it kind of in a weird way it led me to this. And I still
oh,
enjoy
okay.
kind of like following the sport, but yeah, I
Sure.
don't play nearly as much
Okay.
as I
So
would like to.
let's bring it to the present day. So you're managing
Yeah,
editor at Worn & Wound, which is a great place for people to come and see watches, and just tell us a little bit about that, and then how business is at the moment.
sure. So Worn and Wound has been around for gosh, I think like 12 or 13 years at this point. And it was founded as a watch media website, sort of focusing on like small brands, what we usually call like micro brands or independent brands at an affordable price point. And that's where the website really kind of like made a name for itself, because at the time no one else was touching these small brands. And as the website grew, obviously our, the interests of those involved with the website has grown along with it. And so now we still cover those small brands. It's still kind of our bread and butter, and we love those brands, but we also cover the entire industry, brands large and small at all different price points. And we always do it from an enthusiast perspective. So you won't really find like traditional buying guides or other things. We write about the things that we genuinely like and have an interest in, and the idea is to share that with our readers, just to expose them to things that we think are interesting and that we find some excitement in. And recently we've sort of expanded into other watch adjacent topics, because we found that through putting on our wind up watch fairs and other events, that people who are interested in watches are unsurprisingly interested in a lot of other things. So
Mm.
you'll also find articles on our website about photography and everyday carry or EDC, writing instruments, things like that, because there are enthusiast communities kind of like built around things similar to watches, and there's a lot of overlap. So,
Mm,
and we also are interested in these things. So it's just another thing
sure.
we want to
There's
do.
often connections in other areas like automotive as well. You know,
Of
cars and
course, yeah,
watches
that's a big
tend to
one.
go together as well.
Yeah,
And of
absolutely.
course, we mentioned golf and sport, and so I think it goes right across the piece, and entertainment as well. I
Yeah,
think
for
it's
sure.
people are always looking out for those aspects as well.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned your events, wind up watch fairs. I mean, how's that going, and how is that developing?
Windup's great. So currently we do 3 wind up watch fairs annually. We have an event in San Francisco in the spring, and then an event in Chicago in the summer, which was just last month. Um, and then in the fall we do our largest fairs in New York City, which is kind of like the hometown show, which is a lot of fun. So they're great. The Chicago show, the most recent one, happened last month, and it was a big success. It's always fun to kind of to interact with
Mm,
both the brands who are represented there, and also the attendees, the enthusiasts and collectors who come. It's so much fun. It's honestly like my favorite thing that we're
mm,
involved in
mhm.
is the wind up watch fair. It's really rewarding.
And roughly, how many people are sort of turning up to these events now?
Well, the New York show, certainly thousands,
Right. Wow.
across the 3 days of the show. They're all different sizes, and they're also all kind of like growing. So the
Mm,
San Francisco show this year was in a venue that was like easily twice the size of the event that we did the year prior in San Francisco. And New York will have a similar, larger feel this year. Chicago is the smallest show that we do. There's about like 60 some odd brands there, as opposed to 100 plus in San Francisco and New York, roughly. But it's kind of nice to be at a smaller show, honestly, sometimes, because it's a little more intimate and you get to spend a little bit more time chatting with people. At least I do. So yeah, each show has a really distinct, different feel, but they always feel packed and crowded, which is a
hmm.
fun, sort of like exciting
Yeah,
feeling.
sounds amazing. And is there plans to grow that and develop into other cities, other countries? And what are you thinking now?
I think so. Yeah. So I'm not part of the team that actually like puts on the show.
Okay.
We have a great partnerships and events team that does that. But there's always talk of expanding. Really for as long as I think we've been doing the show, people have been
Mhm.
asking for Wind Up to come to their city. So there's certainly other opportunities in the United States.
Great.
I think that we want to pursue, if not Wind Up events, then like smaller scale events, maybe in collaboration with certain brands. And there's always talk of a UK event at some
Okay.
point
Fantastic.
in the future. I know that that's something
Brilliant.
that our upper level management team has
Sure.
been interested in for quite a while.
I think it's great to see that there's this kind of latent demand. I think, certainly post pandemic, people want to get in person. They want to go and interact. They want to go and look and feel. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
I think so. I can remember the first show we did at, kind of like post-pandemic. We actually did like a pop-up event, sort of like while we were still in the pandemic, just to sort
Hmm.
of test the waters. And we got such a great turnout to that very small event. People were so interested, like ready to come out. Because if you remember, I'm sure you do, there was this like boom that happened in
Yeah,
watches over the course of COVID. People had, disposable income they weren't using to spend on
sure.
travel or whatever. And so they took up these other
Yes.
hobbies, and watches were one of them. So yeah, I think that there's so many new people in the hobby, and they're finding these communities, online or on Instagram or whatever. And then
Mm,
like the next step is kind of like meeting in person. And so every wind up, I talk to someone who's like attending their first wind up or just bought their first watch or is brand
mm,
new to it.
mm.
And that's really exciting to see it,
Yeah, that's great to hear.
it's still growing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So look, we've heard a lot about Worn and Wound, which is great. But what about telling us something that we don't know about you guys?
Something you don't know about Warner. So I think the thing that I'd like to mention is that there's a handful of people who you see on like on the masthead and on our YouTube videos, people who are like on camera, people who write for the website. But the team is much larger than that. We've really grown quite a bit, over the last few years. I mentioned our partnerships and events team. We've grown that team out. We have a much larger media team right now than we've ever had before, a full-time videographer and in-house photographer, who are there every day, kind of like creating, video and photography assets for the content that we produce. And they kind of work behind the scenes. You don't see them a lot. We also have like a fully staffed shop, the Wind Up, watch shop, who,
Right.
you don't often, hear from necessarily. They'll pop up in videos from time to time. But
Sure.
yeah, I think sometimes people are surprised when I tell them that we have like, over a dozen people, on the team.
Wow.
They're all kind of like integral to the team's success for sure.
Excellent. Fantastic. So let's talk about your collection. Let's talk about what are you into. So tell us, what is your sort of go-to watch?
Um, that's an interesting question. I don't know that I necessarily have like a go-to watch. I go through periods where
Mm,
I will wear a watch like, for days on end, and then I'll switch and I'll wear something else for days on end. Though a watch I've been wearing a lot recently is my James Lamb Origin Series watch. I don't know if you're familiar with James Lamb. He's a UK-based watchmaker.
yeah.
He hand makes watch cases out of Argentium silver, which is
Yeah,
just
they're
like a
stunning.
really,
Mm,
yeah, incredible casework. He uses these like ceramic dials that are surrounded by this beautiful enamel work. Um, just a absolutely like gorgeous watch. I feel very
mm,
lucky to own one. They're very like low production. So I've been really enjoying wearing that. That's a relatively recent acquisition.
mhm.
Um, I've also recently been wearing an Autodromo Group B watch, which is a US based micro brand and independent brand, inspired by car culture. And the Group B is a very lightweight, kind of easy to wear, thin, sort of like pseudo integrated bracelet style watch. It's
Mm,
just really great to wear on like a hot summer day, like we've been experiencing
sure.
a lot of recently. But my collection runs the gamut. I'm really interested in like in aesthetics. So like the watch has to like look great in my eyes
Mm,
for me to be
mm,
interested in it. I'm not really so much of like a tool watch guy. Like
sure.
I'm much more interested in sort of how a watch looks. And I'm also more and more drawn to independent brands and small brands.
Mm,
And I think that just comes from like working at Worn and Wound and being involved in the industry. I
sure.
love being able to just like make a connection with the brand or with the
Yeah.
person who actually like had a role in making the watch. I find that to be really
Mm.
rewarding.
So it's more about design and craft and the actual skills within that rather than, you know,
Yeah, for
other
me it really
aspects.
is, because I'm not I'm not a scuba diver, I'm not a pilot. I don't need a watch for
No.
any sort of like death-defying activity. For me, it's like it's a design object, it's an
Mm,
aesthetic object, and so those are the things that I tend to prioritize in my own watch collection.
sure. So let's talk about, what are the sort of watches that you would love to own? You've mentioned Rolex, Pateks. I mean, are you sort of, you know, going after those sort of things, or is there other aspects or other brands that you're looking at?
So I've owned a couple of Rolex watches in the past, and I got rid of them
Oh, really?
because I found that like they didn't really it was just a different phase of my collecting, like
Mm,
I sort of I don't want to say like I grew out of them, but my taste just changed, and I kind of
mm,
I became more interested in watches that had, maybe like a little bit more color to them, or were a
mhm,
little bit more had something like a little more interesting about like the design or the story behind them. They're great watches, of course, objectively great watches, but I found that I just wasn't interested in wearing them so much. As far as like watches that I'd be interested in owning. This is brand Swiss brand called Zeitwinkel. They've been around for a while,
yeah.
and they've just kind of like recently caught my eye. I don't know that I don't know that I'm going to purchase one anytime soon. They're quite expensive, but
Mm,
I love I love the design of the watches. They make this really interesting movement out of German silver. One of the last brands to do that. Of
right.
course, A. Lange and Son is another one that makes their movements out of German silver still. Um, so that's one that's caught my eye. There's always like one of the fun things about working in the industry, as
Yeah,
is there's always like something new coming into your inbox. It's hard to keep
absolutely.
up. But yeah, that's there's always like something kind of like down the pike, but nothing specific for me at the moment that I like
No,
am like ready to put down a deposit on.
absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. There's so many options now and so many choices, and there's always something to look at in terms of being a
Yeah,
collector, isn't there?
for sure, for
Um,
sure.
so look, we've been around the watch business for a while now. There's different elements of it. What aspects of the watch business industry do you like?
Um, I mean, for me, it's I mentioned, wind up and how that's,
Hmm.
like probably my favorite thing that we're involved in. It really does come down for me to the people, and kind of like being part of an enthusiast community. I think when I started collecting watches, learning about watches, it was very much a solitary pursuit. It was just me kind of like late at night on eBay, like looking for watches, or,
We've all been there.
in my, job, like prior to working in watches, I was, on my lunch break, kind of like,
Sure.
reading Hodinkee or Worn and Wound, or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. And I didn't really know that there was this like huge group of people who would like be willing to like meet in person and like, go to watch events and so on. Um, and so like that really kind of like opened things up for me, both like professionally and as a collector. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a corny cliche answer, but I think it like really does come down to like being a part of a really vibrant community,
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. I think you're right. And as you say, that when you go to your events and people go there for the first time, there's obviously going to be, this kind of excitement and, other people that are there have been there a few times. So there's always a different aspect to it, which I really love about the watch business as well. So
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
great. What about, what are the sort of areas that you don't like as much, or, what areas could we improve on?
Well, I think something that like it really sort of came to light during that like COVID period
Mhm.
is this has always been present in the watch industry, but it was underscored very much during that era, was this like the hype, what I call like the hype factor in watches, and people just sort
Mhm.
of like flaunting wealth and buying watches as quote unquote investments, and flipping them. And I feel like that's an area of the hobby that I personally don't really you know care to engage in, if I can avoid it. I feel like we're kind of like we're coming out of that, but I don't see as much of that, anymore. It's not as obvious on Instagram and YouTube and so forth. But like that's something I don't like. I think it will never fully be like out of the hobby, because these are, at the end of the day, they're luxury objects. There will always be a subset of people who just kind of like see them as like signifiers of wealth or
Yeah.
some type of status. But that's an aspect of the hobby that has never really felt like authentic to me, that
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't particularly enjoy. But you can insulate yourself from that as an enthusiast. You don't have to
Mhm.
participate in that. And I think I've largely done that. And I think a lot of folks who maybe read our website have also done that, which is nice.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it comes down to choice at the end of the day. I think, showing your wealth has been around for hundreds of years. People
Sure,
have
yeah.
been doing it throughout history, haven't they? So there's always going to be, I think, that element to it. But I think now how the industry's kind of expanded and grown, and I think independents are really where that's going to be, focusing, because they bring something different and something
Yeah.
refreshing, I think, as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's walking around a wind-up event, you can see watches, like you really you understand like how broad the hobby is. You see watches of every style at every
Mm.
price point. And there's just so much to like potentially like pique your interest in the
Mm.
world of like micro brands and independent watches. There
Yeah.
really truly is something
And it's
for everybody.
generally the founders will be there, and it will be
Yes.
the stories. We all love a great story, and that's
Yeah,
what I
for
think
sure.
is also amazing too. Okay, look. So as we sort of come towards the end, look, what's kind of next on the horizon for you guys? What are you kind of looking forward to over the next few months?
So, well, coming up very soon. I'll be in Geneva for Geneva Watch Days in a
Mhm.
couple of weeks. So looking
Yep.
forward to covering that. This will be my first time at Geneva Watch Days. We've done a couple of Watches and Wonders events in the past, but this is my first time in the city for that particular event. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We obviously have Wind Up New York coming up in October that we're in the midst of planning for. It's a very large scale event, requires the entire team to help prep for that. And I'm just working on my function as the managing editor. I've got all these different pieces of content in the works from a number of contributors, including yourself. Of course, you've done written so many wonderful articles for us already,
Thank
and
you.
there's more in the pipeline. So I'm focused on making sure that those articles are as good as they can be over the
Sure.
next few months. Um, and also just like I said before, we're expanding and moving into different areas of
Mm.
enthusiasm. So we're working on new articles on those other topics I mentioned: photography,
Mhm.
EDC, and other similar pursuits as well. So
Sure.
we're going to be expanding in that regard.
That's fantastic. Well, Zach, that kind of brings us to the end. So it's been fascinating to hear your thoughts and views. Very enjoyable. Thanks
Yeah,
very much for your time, Zach. It's been great to see you.
thanks, Andrew. Great to chat with you.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Watches with Mr. Watchmaster. I really hoped you enjoyed this episode. For more information and great stories about watches and the people behind them, please visit www.mrwatchmaster.com. I look forward to hearing from you soon and hope you enjoy the next podcast, which is coming up.